there guys, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice, and welcome back to another Thrifty Review. I'm sure you guys can already hear it. I am still battling that sinus infection and slight cold, but I'm going to do my best to get through this review as quickly as possible because I don't want to put too much strain on my voice right now. Today, we are taking a look at Master's Touch 24 tablet count of watercolor paints. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen paints similar to this all over Amazon, all over Instagram. I know there are several sets out there that resemble this one. There's the Phoenix watercolor set that looks this way. I know there's Grumbacher has a set that looks like this. I've seen a couple of other companies that are producing similar sets. So I was in my local Hobby Lobby the other day and ran across this set marked $10.99. Of course, Hobby Lobby is typically selling their Master's Touch and Fine Touch brand of products at 50% off. So I was able to pick this up for $5.50 plus tax, which I felt like was a really good price for 24 watercolor tablets or cakes, if that's what you would like to call them. You guys know I'm in the process of testing all of Master's Touch water soluble products for a big overall master review of the entire product line eventually. So this was just a matter of time of getting this one out. So let's take a look. The paints come in pretty standard box, carrying the Master's Touch logoing. Master's Touch Fine Art Studio 24 color watercolor set, 24 watercolor tablets, 1 watercolor tube, and 1 brush. Pretty much says the same on each side, giving you color swatches. And if you flip the box over on the back, it says the same at the top with a photo of what the paints look like inside the palette. And then at the very bottom, there is actually a color swatch list with the color names listed in order that the paints come in when you originally open the package. Conforms to ASTM D4236, 2010 Master's Touch Fine Art Studio. It gives Hobby Lobby web address, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and it lets you know that the product is made in China. So that is the box, pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at the palette itself. So again, we've seen palettes like this. I think the most popular one right now is probably the Phoenix watercolor palette, and there is a review on that particular palette by Lindsay the Frugal Crafter on her channel if you would like to go and check that out. I do believe that all of these palettes are pretty similar, so you may hear some things in this review that you've heard about the other brands of palettes that look like this. So before I open this up, let me show you the swatch list of what the how the paints came originally, because I've reorganized them inside here, and I'll let you see that in just a second. So originally 24 colors, there's 2 different layers, and I just swatched the paints out when I got them in this Master's Touch 140-pound cold press watercolor paper journal, which I bought these 2 together actually because I was out with a friend and I left my paints at home, and I just kind of wanted to pick something up so that I could do some artwork that day. So I swatched them out. Originally, or should I say from the very beginning, I could tell that the paints were very, very opaque, and my initial reaction was, these are not watercolors, these are gouache. Although the box does advertise them as watercolors, you can see there that's pretty opaque for watercolors, which we normally think of as transparent. So I just kind of want to show you guys that we're going to get into looking at the color and the quality more in depth in just a second. So looking at the palette itself, let's open it up here. And I'm sorry guys, I didn't clean this palette for the review. I have been doing some paintings with these just to get ready. So here I've reorganized the paints in the color order that I normally do for when I'm working. As you can see, you get 2 layers of 12 paint tablets as they refer to them. I'm used to calling them cakes. And then you also get a tube of white watercolor, which for all intents and purposes, white watercolor typically turns transparent watercolor into a gouache form, or it helps you turn it into gouache. And the information on this tube basically says exactly what the information on the box said. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. And hopefully the glare is not too bad. If so, guys, I really want you to forgive me. So let's just talk about the watercolors here. So they come in a cake form or tablet form. They're dried down pretty hard, guys. I would spray them, or if you get them, if you have them, or this particular set, I sprayed or pre-sprayed before using it. That way it would help the colors release from the tablets a little bit easier. You get a nice range of colors. You do get enough colors in here to be able to do a split primary if you decide that you want to. You're going to get a warm and a cool yellow, warm and a cool red, warm and a cool blue. And then you also get some earth tones, grays, blacks, and then there's some neutral tints in there as well. So for all intents and purposes, a pretty overall comprehensive set of colors for what they are. Keeping in mind, as I was testing these, I kept telling myself that these are paints that I paid $5.50 plus tax for. That way I wouldn't just have my expectations up too high. The tablets remove from the palette, so you can remove them to rearrange them if you want to, or you can pull them out to sit them around and just have the particular colors that you're going to paint from without having all 24 colors out. So I thought that was pretty cool. The tablet size themselves is not too thick. I guess I would say that's about 1/4 of an inch deep. So it's pretty okay size tablet in there. And when you times that times 24, this is actually quite a lot of paint for $5-6. The cakes are not chalky, and actually the paint doesn't dry down chalky. However, you can tell that there are fillers in the paint. Keeping in mind that it's only $5-6, for what it's worth, it's not a lot of fillers, I feel like. So that's pretty much the packaging and the physicalities of what the paint and the palette looks like straightforward. You get this is a removable hinge. I have taken it off to clean it. And there are 9 different little mixing wheels here, which is pretty handy. The plastic that it's made of is sturdy, and it doesn't cause the paint to bead up when you are, mixing it out on the palette. So that was a good thing. So for all intents and purposes, so far so good for a $5-6 paint. Let's take a look at the quality of them. So I swatched the paints out again in the original order that they were in the palette, on another sheet of 140-pound watercolor, 140-pound watercolor paper, simply because I wanted to see if there would be a difference, excuse me, in the opacity or the vibrancy based on doing them on the Master's Touch watercolor paper, because I've told you guys products of the same brand tend to work better together versus putting it on a different brand of watercolor paper. For all intents and purposes, the color stayed just as vibrant and bright from one swatching test to the next. On this particular one, I did do an opacity test. And as you guys can see, as I told you earlier, those paints are pretty opaque, even for the first layer. And a lot of these are just one single individual layer. Some of them I did go ahead and glaze, but the truth of the matter is, after getting through glazing 3 or 4 of them, I saw that it was just really getting more opaque, and it was already opaque and covered the black line with just one layer. So hands down, the paints are opaque. They are not very transparent at all. So the next thing I did was to put them through the standard salt test, as I always do. I will say that the paints were not as reactive to salt as I'm used to seeing from other paints, even other budget paints. Now, I'm not sure if this is because I just didn't use enough water, but I would like to think that I've done the salt test enough to, kind of know how to perform it at this point. Now, don't get me wrong, it gave me some texture in my swatch there, but it didn't give me nearly as much texture as I'm used to getting from salt with other brands of paints. But that's not to say that you can't achieve a texture from it. So the next thing I wanted to do was a lift test. And I kind of wait sometimes to do the lift test with you guys just so you'll get to see how the paints lift themselves. So what I'm going to do is really quickly grab a scrubber brush and wet it. Excuse me. And then we're just going to go ahead and scrub through these. Now, this has been dried down for a few days. So this is actually going to be a good indication. And I'm just going to scrub through all of those, just make one line, and we'll lift that out with a paper towel. And as you can see, they actually lift pretty well. But I'll be honest, most budget paints that I've run across lately do lift pretty well. And I do believe this is because they are budget. You can glaze and you can layer with these, but just keep in mind that because they are so opaque, the more you glaze, the more you layer, the more cakey the paint is going to feel, the more opacity you're going to get from it. But that may be something that you're looking for. Personally, at this point, I had already decided that these were a nice substitute for a gouache, and you can get them at a really affordable price. So then I went ahead and swatched the paints out in the order that I put them in the palette myself, more of a rainbow order of which I work. Which here I used more water in the mixtures in order to do the swatching, and discovered that you can actually get them to be transparent if you use them in a wash with more water than paint. So just keep in mind that if you decide that you get these, or maybe if the other palettes made by the other brands are similar to the quality of these paints, the more water you add, the more transparency you're going to get. The less water you add, definitely the more gouache, opaque feeling that you're going to get from them. So that's pretty much the standard testing. I put it through opacity, salt, lifting, swatched it out 2 or 3 times. 2 times without as much water, 1 time with more water, just to see the different type of variations, the different vibrancies that I can get in the paints. So I mean, it was okay, especially for $5 paints. But of course, I tell you guys, the swatching paints, and I'm a firm believer, is not a true way to just test them. You actually need to paint with them to really get a feel for what they'll do. So let's just take a look really quickly. Let's slide all this to the side. So the very first one I did actually is in here. And it was the weekend that I bought the paints and did this swatch. I had some Crayola colored pencils with me along with these paints. And I painted a little piece of cake here. It was just a really quick sketch, something I was doing to really test the paints and see if they would be good for me as far as a travel palette is concerned. So I'll just lift it there a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let me just zoom in a little so you can see that. I think I got some great detail in the blueberries. I mean, as long as I was using the paints in a watery consistency, I feel like I was able to have great control over them. They didn't get too cakey. They're not chalky at all, actually. Although they may look like they would be, they really aren't chalky, which I thought was a good thing, again, for a budget paint. So next I decided, after I did this particular swatch sheet, that I would just do a little quick painting composition where I did some cherries, which I love doing cherries, guys. I'll do cherries in a minute. It's a really quick way to test paints. Got some really nice opacity in the background of this painting. I believe the coloration and the vibrancy and the values that I were able to get in the cherry worked out pretty nicely. Now, again, they are opaque, so I did use a gel pen for my highlights, as I tend to do with most gouaches that I use. Worked out pretty well. They layered pretty well. Just keeping in mind that the more I layered them, the more thick the paint is. Now, here's a great thing I will say, though. I was able to get the paint thick without it cracking. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then finally, I did this little landscape. Because you guys know I've been working on my landscapes more. I did this little landscape, and it's not a masterpiece. It was not intended to be a masterpiece. It was really intended to test the paints and to see how far I could go with pushing them. For all intents and purposes, it was cool doing this painting. I had fun. I was able to achieve different variations. The paints actually mix really well. But as I've told you guys before in other videos, when it comes to really budget paints like this, I feel like it's best to actually let them mix on the paper versus mixing them on the palette. Although I didn't experience too many problems doing that. Here I was able to mix a really nice gray tone from using the ultramarine and the burnt sienna. And it didn't get muddy, although I could tell it had fillers in it. So I just kind of did a blue tonal value landscape painting here, and I think it came out well. Again, not a masterpiece, but I was just testing the paints. So guys, you know, for what it is, the paints are nice. Okay, should I say. They are opaque. They're more like a gouache to me than a watercolor. You can use them in watery washes though to get a watercolor effect or feel. So, you know, that's pretty much what I have on the paint, straightforward. You can pick them up, like I said, from your local Hobby Lobby or order them from hobbylobby.com if you're interested in them. I mean, do I suggest the paints? Sure I do. I think they'll be pretty cool for kids. I think they would be cool for like card makers or maybe scrapbookers. I mean, I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend them for a professional artist who's used to using professional grade paints, unless you go into it knowing, hey, I can't expect out of these paints what I get out of my normal paints. But yeah, so kids, card makers, scrapbookers, somebody who's not really using watercolor paints is in a very serious manner, so to speak, or if you're looking for a really affordable substitute to gouache. If you're a gouache painter, if you do like fashion sketching or fashion illustrating, I think that these would work well because they'll be affordable, especially if you're looking to reproduce whatever it is you did digitally instead of, you know, hanging it on a wall. Because let's be clear, there is no pigment information, there is no light fast information, and I can pretty much guarantee you that they probably are not that light fast. Not sure what factory they're made in, and in comparison to the other Master's Touch products that I've used, they are okay, but not something that I would just run out and, you know, just, well, I was about to say not something I would just run out and spend my money on, but you know what? The truth of the matter is, if I was teaching a class and I needed some really affordable paints to recommend to my class just to get started for beginner work or for like travel work, I think I would probably recommend these. I think I would. So there you have it, guys. Another quick review on a really affordable budget brand of paint. You guys know I like to bring you information on budget paints because I know that everybody does not have the money to just spend on artist quality products. It's okay. It's okay that you don't have hundreds of dollars to just spend on big expensive brands. That's why I'm going to continue to search and look for brands that are affordable and pocket friendly that you may want to add to your art supply collection. So guys, if you heard or saw anything in this video that you like or you found helpful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Remember, giving it a thumbs up is going to get it in front of more viewers and help the channel to grow, along with sharing the video. Sharing is caring, and it does the same thing as hitting that like button does. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with the new content I have coming up. Hit that bell so that you'll get notifications when those videos are loaded. Go ahead and follow us and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Keep in mind that you can post and share your work with us in the community on the Facebook page. I would love to see it, guys. I really, really would. And remember, as I tell you at the end of every single video, guys, just keep painting.